welcome everyone to our session. We're going to get started in just a couple of minutes. If you could please go into the chat and your name and where you're from, that would be great. You could also please make sure that I'm going to put up our little announcement. If you could make sure that your mute button is red. There's some arrows at the bottom of the screen here. Please make sure you turn your chat or turn off your webcam. And then you can see where the chat bar is too. That's where you can place your information. Tell us about you, what your name is and where you're from. We're so excited you're here with us today. And I see as folks are coming in today, welcome to Courtney from Grosse Pointe and Melissa from Plymouth Canton. Thanks for being here today. Sandy from Cornerstone, thanks for being here today. Teresa's here from Grosse Pointe also. We've got Mary from Wayne Westland, Sarah from Plymouth Canton, so joining us today. Thanks so much for being here. If you're just joining us, thanks for coming. We're going to have a really big session today. We're going to ask that you follow some of the directions on the screen there, and please make sure that you're muted. And also, because we have so many people, if you hit the button to turn off your webcam, that would be great. That tends to help a little bit with saving the bandwidth for everybody. So thanks for being here. Please go ahead into the chat and tell us your name, your district, where you're from. We'd love to see who's in the house today. Looks like Samaria's here, Dearborn Academy, and Grib from Riverview. Hello, Jason. Heather from Wyandotte is here. Fiona from Southfield, thanks for being here. Marianne, I see Carrie's here. So excited to have everybody here. Juanita's here from Harper Woods. Thanks again, everyone. We're just going to wait just another moment here to get everybody logged in. Again, if you're just joining us, please turn off your webcam. The arrows are at the bottom to help you with that, along with muting yourself. That will help things as we're getting started today. Okay, well, welcome again, everybody, to small group literacy instruction in the virtual classroom. We're excited to have you with us today. And we're going to jump right in. My name is Bridget Regan. I am one of the literacy consultants at Wayne County RESA. Excited to be here with you. Joined with a couple of my colleagues, Debbie Reeves, who's also a literacy consultant, and Heather Rodeman, assessment and instruction consultant. The three of us bring together a wide background of experiences, from being classroom teachers, reading recovery teachers, elementary principals, directors. So we bring quite a wide range of experiences with us today as we're sharing this content with you. We're also joined by our colleague, Laura Gabrion, who's our behind the scenes person. She'll be helping monitor the chat and helping folks get bumped out of the session again, because we have such a big session today. If you do get bumped out, please go back in and Laura will be ready to help bring you back into the session without any problems. Just a reminder, if you're just joining us, our session is very large today. We're asking you to please mute yourself, and to also please consider wearing headphones if you have them. That helps with the background noise. And then please turn off your webcam to save for the bandwidth. It'd also be helpful for you to locate the chat bar. If you're just coming in, you can tell us where you're from, your name and your district, and what you teach. We're excited to have you here. We've also provided for you a tool that you can help, and Laura's going to put this in the chat for us. This is a reflection guide that you can take notes on as you go. So if you'd like to do that and you have a printer nearby, if you like kind of the old-fashioned way, you can certainly do that to take some notes, or if you have multiple screens going, that could be a way for you to keep track of today's content as well. And again, Laura's going to put this tiny URL into the chat for us. So to get us started today with small group instruction, we'd like you to really reflect on your practice from the spring. Okay, you can see the question there in blue. How would you describe your practice with small group instruction this past spring? We're going to engage in what's called a chat flurry. This is really fun to do with students as well. So what I'd like you to do is take a minute and read the choices 1 through 5, thinking about your own practice with small group instruction this past spring, or if you're in a support role, maybe how you view the teachers that you're supporting, how that maybe looked for them. And you're going to open the chat and put the number in there with what you're thinking. So when you're ready, go ahead and put your number in. Let's see where we're at. So I'm seeing some ones, so absent from classrooms, lots of ones, couple of twos, tried it a few times. Some people saying used it number 4 often, used consistently. I'm seeing some ones and twos, tried a few times. Okay, thanks so much for participating. On a related note, this is a way that you can engage in a poll with students without setting up an actual poll. If you're not familiar, Zoom actually has a polling feature, but this is a way that you could, in a more low-tech way, perhaps create your own poll, or ways that you might ask students to respond. You could pose a question to them and ask them to respond to something in the chat. All right, so here's our agenda today. We have a packed agenda. We're going to really start off by thinking about distance learning as an opportunity and hopefully kind of reframe our thinking around virtual learning. We're then going to break down small group instruction into the why, the what, and the how. When we get to the how portion, we have a sample video lesson. It's actually myself serving as the teacher of this lesson, and I'll be honest, it's pretty raw and it's pretty real. These are kids that I've never met before. I decided to take a risk and try a lesson with students so see that if I can do it, so can you. So we're going to get to view a little bit of a lesson later, then we're going to step into some of those essential elements of small group instruction, thinking about the technology, the supplies you might need, how you might align your content, and then accessing digital text, right? That's always a big question. How can I teach small groups when the books are at school and the kids are at home? So we think we have some tools and some possible answers for you with that as well. And then lastly, we're going to load you with some resources that will help you as you begin to embark on this journey of small group instruction from a distance. So to get us started, we really like to turn to some of the researchers here. If you're not familiar with Fisher, Fry, and Hattie, they've really got some brilliant work, and this is a very hot off the press book that's just come out. And I'm sure that we've all heard kind of the saying that, you know, teachers that we're all experiencing our first year as teachers again, right? And that, you know, I myself have been in education for 25 years, but now it kind of feels like the first year all over again. I really believe that we have a choice to make as we consider that statement, our first year as teachers again. While I certainly remember that my first year of teaching was exhausting and hard, it was also exhilarating. I can literally see myself in my very first classroom, and I believe it's that this is the energy and the enthusiasm that we need to capitalize on. And the authors of this book would concur. As you can see, they say, you know, we see distance learning as an opportunity to engage students in different ways and potentially address some of the needs that could not have been met in traditional classes. So we'd like you to be thinking about that today, how you might be able to view this challenge as an opportunity. They go on to say that, you know, you're still an educator, right? You didn't forget how to teach. And I think that's a really important reminder to all of us, whether we're in our 25th year of education like myself, or whether we're in our second year of teaching. You can still impact the lives of students and know that you make a difference. So we invite you today to have that frame of reference in your mind as we're engaging in this content today. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Heather, who is going to share with us a little bit about the why, you know, why we would even want to engage in small group instruction virtually. Heather?
Thanks, Bridget. So when we think about small group instruction, we really want to lean into the research around what it means when we form our small groups. So literacy skills we know are foundational to the self-esteem and the opportunities that are put forth for our students. And we want to enhance those literacy skills. And it's hard for teachers to do that because we have a wide variety of, a wide range of literacy skills, reading and writing skills within a classroom of students. So we often ask, how do we do that? And one way is through small group instruction. According to the research done by Hernandez, if a student cannot read or comprehend by 3rd grade, the instructional road ahead of them is going to be really, really tough. So this means that literacy instruction and the use of these research-based practices are crucial in our classrooms, whether it be face-to-face, hybrid, or virtual. So small group instruction really allows for teachers to differentiate and create interest-based interactions among students. This allows us to focus in on specific skills that students may need by offering different groups. Small groups are opportunities for students to engage with one another in interactive conversations. They can build sense making, or they can serve as a scaffold for other learning steps that need to happen. These rich discussions that occur in the small group can also help students with their higher order thinking. They can clarify understandings or clean up some misconceptions. They're able to practice and apply literacy strategies, but they can build and share knowledge. So that's just a little bit of the research base around small group instruction. But no matter what school looks like in the fall, we want to use the research base of our literacy essentials to guide our literacy practices for every child every day.
So while the content of what we teach during small group instruction is addressed throughout all of the essentials, today's focus is addressed specifically on Essential 3, which is all about small group instruction. And we hope that you'll take the time to dive into these essential practices more deeply with the documents. But for today, we just want to highlight a few key points. So in Essential 3, the important thing to know is that these are flexible groups that we're forming, and that we form them based on our observed and assessed student needs, which we know are always changing. So the groups are always changing. These are not static groups. They're very flexible. And that during the lesson, the teacher's goal is that to have the students spend most of their time actually reading and processing text. And also the teacher uses this time to coach students, and that's where you can dip in and out with individual students and really target your support to that individual child's needs. So it's great for differentiating. While all 10 of the essential practices are essential on their own, they also support the effectiveness of each other. So it's really important that we consider where and how each of these practices are going to be addressed. For example, the essentialness of Essential 10 is really easy to recognize when we're in a remote setting. We need to intentionally plan for how we're going to assist families in supporting their children's learning at home, and of course with technology logistics as well as the content. So what information and resources will families need to support student learning? Also, the essentialness of Essential 1 cannot be overlooked. As Jennifer Saravallo's famous quote, without engagement, you've got nothing. And we certainly know that that's true. So as we plan for small group instruction, we really have to consider how we're going to deliberately support our students to be actively engaged in the learning and motivated to continue toward becoming a lifelong literacy learner. So as we proceed today, we hope that you'll be thinking about how could you use small group instruction during these first few weeks of school to build those important relationships with students and also their families, and then to foster that all-important motivation and engagement. And we like to point out silver linings whenever possible. So even in this remote environment, there's actually a silver lining where it comes to small group instruction, because if you think about it, usually at the beginning of the school year, you're not able to do a lot of pulling of small groups because you're busy learning about your kids' needs and also building that stamina for them to be independent while you're working with the small group. Not so in a remote setting. So you can actually get started sooner using small group instruction. And it's really a powerful vehicle for building relationships. If you think about it, when all of this began in the spring, you already had a relationship with those students. But this year you'll be starting from scratch. So it's really an opportunity that we have to do small groups to support the building of those all-important relationships. And we can also use small groups now to teach kids those virtual routines and how to use those tech tools.
So this brings us to the what. And Nell Duke actually published an article last July, so prior to pandemic, around considerations for small group instruction. And in that article, she outlined several different pieces that should be considered when we create our small groups. One, instruction should be explicit. So our small groups should focus on the content standards, where students are in relation to those content standards, and what research-based instructional practices are going to help students progress in their literacy development. We also need to provide a balance between instruction and application. And this seems like it would be definitely easy to do in small group, but oftentimes we focus on just the instructional piece. While instruction is really important, we have to provide that time for students to actually apply the instruction that was given in the small group. We need to build on the world knowledge. And this really means integrating those science and social studies and mathematics tasks and literacies into our small group when we are thinking about literacy. We also need to understand the impact of teacher expectations. And this really speaks to the text levels. Are we only defining our small groups by a child's text level? We don't want students to be defined by their reading levels. Text levels are tools that we use to make informed instructional decisions. We don't need students to define their reading process by getting to a higher level. We want students to get to a higher level because we want them to see reading as enjoyable. They see reading as something to learn something new or to gain insight into the world. We need to consider time management. So like Debbie pointed out, we can start small group instruction earlier, but we also have to consider what are the other kids going to be doing while I'm engaging in a small group instruction? How might I manage that? Are they engaged in quality activities while I'm working with the small group? And the last piece is how are we going to group our students? We don't always want to group our students by text level because our students are more than just text levels. We want to consider the flexible ways that we can group our students in order to ensure that they are getting everything that they need to progress in their literacy development. So how do we form those small groups? Research suggests that when we form our small groups, that they be flexible, meaning that kids can fluidly move in and out based on their strengths and their needs. Teachers should consider a variety of ways to group students. So one way, yes, is through a text level, but we can also group by reading goals. We can group by a strategy. We can group by common interests. Today's lesson that you're going to see, Bridget, with the small group is based on a strategy. So to form our small groups, teachers need to consider a variety of pieces of evidence to help create them. So considering the strengths as well as needs of students. Once the evidence has been gathered and examined, teachers will want to form their small groups. Then the teacher will plan for their small group and teach the small group, considering the research base from the literacy essentials as well as how students are responding to the instruction. Does the teacher have to shift, make adjustments? Then teachers can monitor the progress of their students within the small groups and shift as needed so kids can move in and out. This is really a cycle of assessment that the teacher is engaging in while they are thinking about and being intentional with the planning of their small group instruction.
So as we start to think about that, and we've taken some time to talk about the why, the why we would want to do small groups. And Debbie mentioned, the opportunity really that virtual teaching gives us to engage in those small groups earlier, right? Consider how you might pull together a small group of students with a rich read aloud that you're just going to merely enjoy the text with kids and teach them how to navigate through those interactive tools through Zoom or whatever your platform is. So that's one thing to consider. The other thing that Heather mentioned is, we're going to pull together kids for different purposes, right? So today's lesson is going to show students that are not grouped by text level. In fact, we intentionally did not pick students with the same text level. And as I mentioned earlier, we really wanted this lesson to feel real, right? Therefore, I did record myself with 3 third grade students that I've never met. And this is going to be probably your reality when you're back to school in a couple of weeks, right? Back in the spring, as we mentioned, we had the advantage of working with kids for many months before the closure. We knew our students. Now things are different. So I decided to take a risk and do this, and I know that you can do the same. If you look at the information on the slide here, you'll see kind of the makeup of this particular group. These are third graders, very new third graders. It is a heterogeneous group. We've got, based on their grade 2 text level, a thriving reader, an average reader, and a striving reader. All of these students were also pulled together because they really enjoy nonfiction topics, right? That's of high interest to them. It's also important to note that the benchmarking has not been completed. It wasn't completed in the spring due to COVID. And then, of course, early on in the year, it also hasn't been completed. And so really the purpose behind this lesson is, as you can see on the screen, is really used to design to gather that initial baseline data around a specific standard that you're going to see in just a moment, which was the focus. Another challenge that teachers are going to face with small group instruction virtually is, the text. Where are we going to get the text from? And so if you haven't heard of EPIC, EPIC is a great source of text for a digital resource, and that's what you're going to see in today's lesson, this particular text with tornadoes. I also decided to focus the lesson on some content, building in some literacy and science content together. And in third graders study Earth systems, and within that, one of the themes is weather and climate. And so was making the assumption that this class has been engaged in a study of weather and climate, has been studying and tracking. One of the NGSS standards is around creating data tables and tracking weather. So as a class, we've been engaging in those things, and we're learning about different types of weather. The Michigan ELA content standard, that's the focus of the lesson, as you can see, is Reading Information Standard 3.2. Determine the main idea of a text and recount those key details to explain how they support the main idea. Now, of course, we know that it's not just as simple to create a learning target by putting I can in front of that standard and calling it a day, right? We know that once we unpack that standard, which we're not going to take the time to do today, but once we unpack it, we see that there are many, many caveats. So I thought deeply about what is it that I would want kids to know and be able to do early on as third graders. And I know that by looking back at the second grade standard, the second grade standard doesn't actually introduce the idea of main idea. It talks about main topic. So this lesson then would be a first introductory look at how students tackle a text and understand what it's all about. So therefore, the specific learning target you're going to see in this virtual lesson is on the screen. And that's, I can use text features to figure out the main idea of a passage. So you're going to see in the lesson that I take some time to explicitly model with students how that might look, and then they get a chance to try it. Now, we mentioned earlier in a typical face-to-face session when you're engaged in a guided reading lesson or small group lesson at the classroom, once you start your teaching and the kids are getting ready to try it on their own, in a face-to-face setting, you simply lean in and listen to one of them read, right? I've seen teachers where sometimes they have their kids turn their back to the table, and then if they're at a guided reading table, and then when it's their turn for the teacher to listen in, that student might turn their chair around and listen in. But in a virtual setting, how does that happen, right? That's why I'm guessing why many of you are probably in this session today. How can we make this happen? So if you have Zoom and you have a paid account, one way you can do that is by sending the students to individual breakout rooms. Unfortunately, this is only a feature in the paid Zoom account, so you could send them to a breakout room. You as the teacher have the ability to pop in and out of those rooms. You can also, send through EPIC. You can send the students the text digitally to them so they could have a copy of their own text. Now today, you're actually not going to see that. You're not going to see individual breakout rooms, even though we have the capability of doing it. We wanted to show you another way, how you could do it in a low-tech way in case you don't have the paid account and how it might look. So today you're going to see, again, a really low-tech way to do that. And we're going to invite you to kind of watch and see the moves that I made as a teacher to make that happen. So with that, we're going to step into the video. If you could take a moment before I hit play to look at what we want you to look for down in red at the bottom of the screen. We want you to, as we learned from Debbie earlier, the importance of reading motivation and engagement. So I'd like you to be looking for the moves that I made during the lesson that might promote motivation and engagement. If you could just jot some notes down. And perhaps look for some of those tools and techniques that you notice that are different in this virtual setting that you might be able to take away. Now this, again, as I mentioned, this was a really real and raw lesson. The lesson in its entirety is about 22 minutes. We're not going to watch all of it. Rather, I'm going to show pieces of it to you, pause, kind of forward through parts of it, and I'll narrate for you so that you can get the gist of some of the lesson. And then you are going to get a chance in breakout rooms to talk about what you've seen. So we really want to encourage you to jot some notes as you go, again, with those two things that are in red. All right, so with no further ado, let's keep in mind that I was taking a risk doing this, and here we go. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here today, girls. Welcome to our lesson today. It's good to see all of you. Everybody's doing well so far today. You're having a great day. I see Mila's on the screen and Selena and Aubrey. So we're here today, girls, to have our small group reading lesson together. All right, here's what we're going to do to get started. I'm going to share my screen, and I have a really cool video that I'm going to put on that I'd like you to watch. Okay, now before I hit play, can everybody see the screen? When I hit play, I want you to watch and see what you think we're going to be reading and learning about today. Here we go. We're going to watch just a little bit. Here it comes.
I feel bad for the people who died.
Well, what did you girls think about that? What do you think? What was happening in that video? What was that? Do you know? Raise your hand if you want to share. Go ahead. Go ahead, Aubrey. What was that, do you think?
It was about tornadoes.
That was definitely a tornado, several tornadoes that we saw, right? And I heard somebody say they felt bad for the people that might die. Sometimes tornadoes do cause destruction and people do lose their lives. Today, girls, we're going to be reading and learning about tornadoes. In our science class, we've been studying about tornadoes and weather, right? And we've been tracking our weather to kind of see what happens each day and creating data tables. But today, we're going to read and learn more about tornadoes. And with our book that we're going to read today, I was thinking, you know how we've been practicing what the main idea is of a text? Today, I'm going to teach you a strategy to help you figure out what the main idea of a passage is. Let me show you the learning target. What I'd like you to do is unmute your camera, unmute your microphone, and we're going to read the target together today. Okay, when you're ready, let's read it together. What our target today says, let's read it together. And can you say it with me? I can use text features
to figure out the main idea of the passage.
That's right. I can use text features to figure out the main idea of the passage. And remember, we learned that passage is just another word for part of the text, part of the story. So don't be confused by that. So we're going to use some of the text features, and we've learned about lots of text features so far. We've learned about captions and pictures and titles. So we're going to use those to help us. So let me show you the book we're going to read today. I'm going to bring it up on the screen. Give me just a minute, girls. You're going to be so excited when you get to see this book. Here it comes. It's from one of our favorite places, Epic. I know you girls like to read some of the books from Epic. Can everybody see it? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the title of our book, Tornadoes, kind of like what we just saw in that video, right? So we're going to be learning about tornadoes, and let's look at the table of contents page. We've already learned what a table of contents is, right? We know that this tells us the different sections and the different parts of the book. So we can look down here and see all of the different things, see what's on page 6 and page 8. We're actually going to go to page 8 to practice this strategy today. Can everybody see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can see what our title is of this passage. Can you see it, Mila? You can't see it? All right, let me see if I can scroll down just a little bit. There we go. Can you see it now? I bet you can see it now. There's our title. It's called Slow and Fast Movers. So we know that the title, girls, is one of our text features, right? So as I think about this title, it makes me think I'm going to be reading about how some tornadoes might move faster than others. And do you girls see that word or in the middle of our title? It says slow or fast movers. That word kind of gives me a clue too. It makes me think that sometimes they're moving slow or they might be moving fast. So that title can help us. What are some of the other text features that you see on the screen that might help us on this page? Raise your hand if you think you know one. What's another text feature that might help us? Mila, do you know one? Do you know another text feature on this page? Not sure. Selena, do you remember some of the other text features? Remember we said titles. What are some of the other things that you see around the edges of the page? What do you see, Selena? Can you unmute and tell us? You remember what this is called down here in the box? We call that a table. Remember, a table. So tables can help us with things too. So I want your eyes to all zoom in on this part of the table right here. This is what it says. This is kind of a fancy word. Enhanced Fujita scale. Can you girls unmute and say that word Fujita with me? Unmute and try that word with me. Fujita.
Fujita.
Fujita scale. Well, here's what we say now. To make it short, this is what meteorologists, they call it the EF scale, the number. So we can say a tornado might be an EF1 or an EF2. Now look at these numbers here, girls, going down. This is how fast the tornado is moving, miles per hour. Just like a car drives. When we're driving on the freeway, you might drive 65 miles per hour. This would be about what a car is going. But what do you notice about these numbers as you look down? What do you notice, Aubrey, about these numbers as you look down here? Are they getting bigger or smaller?
Bigger.
They're getting a lot bigger. This one down here in the red, girls. At this point, what I do then is I continue to model the other text features on the page, and I read aloud and do a think aloud about what is happening in my mind as a reader. So I'm going to forward a little bit more so you can see the next chunk of the lesson. Wow, so as I think about this now and all of the text features and everything I just read, it's helping me think about what this passage is all about. And here's what I'm thinking it's all about. I'm thinking that it's all about how our tornadoes can move at different speeds, sometimes slow, sometimes fast. Sometimes they cause little damage, sometimes they cause a lot of damage. And it just depends how strong those winds are. So this could be my main idea statement. Can you girls see that? I'm going to read it to you. It says, tornadoes can move at different speeds and cause different types of damage depending on how strong the winds are. So that would be the main idea. That's what this passage is all about. Give me a thumbs up if you think that makes sense, girls. Okay, now it's going to be your turn. Now it's going to be your turn to practice because we're just practicing this today. So we're going to go to a new passage in the text. If you can give me a thumbs up that you can see what's on the screen. Everybody see that? And here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to read it silently in your mind and practice using those text features. Remember that the text features are the title, the picture, all of those captions, and you're going to be thinking, what is this passage all about? Are you ready? Okay, here's what we're going to do. This time, I'm going to ask you to read it by yourself, and when you see your name, you're going to take your headphones out, except for when it's your turn. And you'll know it's your turn to come back with your headphones on when I hold your card up. See, like here's Mila's. So when it's Mila's turn to put her headphones back on, she'll see her name. So I'm going to start with Aubrey. So Aubrey, you're going to keep your headphones in, and I'm going to ask Mila and Selena to take their headphones out, and you can start reading. Okay? All right, so Mila, take your earphones out so you don't hear me anymore. Same with you, Selena. Take your earbuds out for a minute. And Aubrey, you keep yours on. Okay, Aubrey, go ahead. I'm going to give you a minute, Aubrey, to start reading silently. So look at what's on the screen and start reading. And in a minute, I'm going to ask you to read out loud to me. At this point, I continue to have a reading conference with Aubrey, but I'm actually going to forward now so that you can see the conference with Mila, as the conference with Mila is a little shorter. You've also probably noticed that I've done this in a pretty low-tech way. The students are viewing the text that I'm sharing on the screen. We'll talk a little bit about that at the end too, what my next moves would be as the teacher. So here is Mila's conference about to start. Okay. All right, here we go. Mila, do you have your earbuds back in? Here she comes. Hi, Mila, can you hear me now? Okay, I need you to unmute your microphone now so that we can talk for a minute. Okay. Tell me about your reading. Were you able to use the text features, the picture? When you first saw that picture, what were you thinking? What were you thinking this was going to be all about?
I thought it was going to be all about, like, how much damage tornadoes do.
How much damage tornadoes do? Okay. What were some of the clues that made you think that? What were some of the clues? Which text features helped you?
The title.
The title. Was there a certain word in the title that made you think it might be about damage?
Dangerous.
Dangerous, right? If something's dangerous, what does that mean?
It means it can do dangerous damages.
Yeah, dangerous damage, right? Not safe if things are dangerous. How about the picture? Did this help give you some clues too?
The car is broken.
Yeah, the car is not looking so good.
And there's wood everywhere.
Absolutely. So what do you think so after you did the reading then, were you right? Did using those text features help you? Is that what this passage was all about then? How tornadoes or twisters can be dangerous? Were you right? Is that what it was all about?
Well, it was like,
what was it about when you did the reading?
It was like mostly about how much damage it does.
How much damage it does? And did you read a detail that you found interesting? No, you didn't find a detail that was interesting? I thought this was interesting, that sometimes they only last a few minutes when it touches down, right? This damage can happen really fast. Okay, nice job, Mila. Keep your earphones on, okay? Because we're going to have everybody come back now. Let's see if everybody sees our signal here. And we're going to wrap today. Okay, here comes Selena. Okay, we'll see Aubrey here. There's Aubrey. Aubrey, put your earbuds back in. You have them in? Okay, great. Everybody can hear? All right, nice job today, girls. So today, let's kind of go back to what our target was, all right? Can everybody please unmute their microphones? And we're going to read it one more time. Here was our target today. Ready, girls? I can use
text features to figure out the main idea of the passage.
I can use text features to figure out the main idea of the passage. How do you think you did today? Were you successful in doing that? I know this was our first try and this takes practice. So if you think it was pretty easy, I want you to give yourself a thumbs up. If you think, I did okay, I know I need to keep practicing it, put your thumb in the middle. And if you think maybe this was kind of tricky for you and you're going to need lots more help, put your thumbs down. Show me, what are you thinking? How was this first time with using text features? Oh, Aubrey, good job. You used one of the things right on the Zoom. If you know how to do that, you can do it. Aubrey was saying thumbs up. How about Mila and Selena? Oh, Selena gave a thumbs up. Mila, what are you thinking? In the middle, you think you need a little more practice? That's okay. Because this is a hard skill to figure out what this is. So girls, we can always remember that text features is one strategy we can use to help us figure out the main idea. Nice job today. Okay, everyone. Thanks so much for indulging in that. As I mentioned, it was pretty raw video, right? Pretty real life. You probably noticed that as I was coaching one of the students, one of the kids was not really reading. Also real life. These will be some things, some challenges, but we wanted to give you an opportunity to see how it might happen virtually. So here's what we're going to do next. Laura, you're still with us, right?
Oh, sorry, Bridget. I won't be able to broadcast in the breakout room, but I'm putting the questions in the chat right now.
Okay, sounds good. So in just a moment, Laura's going to invite you to a breakout room. This was that feature we mentioned earlier if you have the paid version. So we wanted to give you a chance to experience it as a learner yourself. And when you're in the breakout room, we're going to ask you to talk about, you can select one of these two questions to talk about. Either how did you see me promote motivation and engagement throughout the lesson, or if you'd like to talk about some of the virtual techniques and tools that you saw and some things that you gleaned with that. We're just going to stay in the breakout room for about 4 to 5 minutes at the most. So take a minute and quickly introduce yourself in your group. Laura, if you could put us into rooms of 4 to 5 people, and we'll just have some time to experience this as learners ourselves. So if you're not familiar with breakout rooms, in just a moment, you're going to get an invitation on your screen, and you'll just need to click accept, and it will move you into the breakout room. When it's time to come back, Laura will have the capability to bring everybody back and kind of give you a 1 minute warning. Okay, so Laura, we are ready. If you are ready, hopefully as you watch the video, you're able to take some notes on some of those things and you can share some of your insights. Just to have a couple of minutes. So this is another way to do a turn and talk. Welcome back, everybody. As you're coming back in, we know that was not enough time. We definitely know it was not enough time. But we wanted you to be able to experience that. We're going to wait until those numbers get a little bigger. The participants are starting to come back in. Thanks for your patience. And this is how it would be in real life as well if you were doing this in the classroom. So as folks are coming back in, I'd encourage you to reflect on some of those things that you talked about, some of those things that you'd maybe like to take into your own practice as you move forward into the fall. And it looks like folks are jumping back in right now.
You pulled us away for some great conversations.
I know. I'm so sorry. That's what's so hard about this, to do all this in an hour. So a couple of things that I just wanted to recap about this. The first thing around the content of the lesson, okay, teaching main idea is a really hard skill, right? So as I think about what I would do next as a teacher, I know that I'm going to need, lots and lots of practice, right? The kids are going to need lots and lots of practice. I would see myself doing this in small group settings, in whole group settings, even in one-to-one. The next step, I think also, you saw that I modeled in the lesson writing that main idea statement. I didn't ask kids to do that this time, right? That is something I probably would have kids do. That would be another piece. And then just remembering to have patience, right? To have patience through this. You saw there were some times where I got kind of deer in headlights when I posed a question and I had to do some leading to get them. You know, they were nervous too. They knew they were being filmed and what this was for, right? I told them ahead of time they were going to be movie stars. So I wanted to make sure that you saw some of the silent signals that were used during the session, right? So if you don't have the ability to do a formal breakout room like we just did, there are ways that you can do it low tech using those index cards. And you can see how where that red arrow was pointing by using everyone or all, whatever signal you use. A couple other disclaimers. Remember that this video lesson was a strategy lesson. You know, therefore, I was using just a portion of the full text was used to model and for them to practice. Next, though, students would go off and read the entire text. You know, that would be part of what they would be doing. And so if you delve into EPIC a little bit further, you'll see that you can assign books to kids. It would take some teaching up front, certainly, to teach them how to navigate a couple of screens, to have their Zoom screen up as well as their EPIC book up. But, you know, I'm confident that kids can do it, and they can rise to the occasion. All right, so we are going to move on now to our last chunk with some of the essential elements for successful small group virtual instruction. Heather, I think this is you.
So we've identified some things that you might want to consider when you're grouping students or engaging students in small group instruction. And so we've identified 4 elements. You'll notice that we've carried that science piece forward if you see the background of the slide. But we've chunked them into tech tips, supplies, aligning the content, and whole text. So the first part is the tech tips. And this is really knowing the device that your students might be using. So what you didn't see in the video before the recording was one of the students, Selena, didn't know how to use the volume on her iPad. So students really have to know the devices that they're using in order to know where the volume buttons are, how to turn it on and off, how to navigate it. And then know your video platform. So the kids, these girls are all friends, and they Zoomed all the time during the pandemic from March to June. And so they knew how to use the reaction buttons, but you may have to teach your students how to use those reaction buttons, or even go low tech like Bridget said. Where to find the mute button, where to find the video button, and then even using the headsets. The headsets were one way that we were able to have that one-on-one coaching with the students, but you could use breakout rooms too. And so these were some of the supplies that we suggest that you might have at the ready. The ones that are highlighted are the ones that Bridget utilized during her small group instruction, but you might also consider dry erase markers, notepads, mini whiteboards for the kids to hold up to do those total participation techniques. You might consider having students use emoji cards to, you know, write or draw a picture of the emotion that they're feeling or their level of comfort, magnetic letters or paper letter tiles. All of these things can really help to facilitate a really, really strong small group instruction.
So we know that it's very helpful to align literacy instruction with our content learning. It helps you to get a more bang for your buck time-wise, but also in content learning, because we know that content learning has a significant impact on reading comprehension. The more a reader brings to a text, the deeper their understanding is going to be. And the same thing goes with vocabulary. The more they're able to understand what they're reading vocabulary-wise. There's a great article that will be in the chat that you can read more about how important content learning is for reading. Teaching content is teaching reading, for you to explore later. But right now we want to turn your attention to Essential 7, which actually addresses this. So it calls for intentional and ambitious efforts to build that important vocabulary and content knowledge as part of our literacy instruction. And we know at the elementary level, our eternal mission is to infuse more informational text into our classroom or our virtual libraries. But rather than having kids just read random topics in informational text, what we want to think about is creating text sets that are a group of informational texts. And this could also apply to narrative, that books that are related by theme. But in terms of informational text, organizing our informational texts around the same topic to help kids understand and develop a deeper knowledge of the topic. And also in terms of vocabulary, text sets can really provide that essential, the essential element of repeated exposures, because kids really need to see and hear and use vocabulary on multiple occasions in order for them to own it.
Debbie, if I could just add one thing about that with building text sets in EPIC. If you're not familiar with EPIC, when you go to EPIC, you actually can do that. You can build collections on topics right within the site itself. And EPIC is completely free. It allows you to search by text level and so on. So that's a really nice feature in EPIC.
And keep in mind, we're not just talking books. So of course, articles, but also videos to build that content knowledge. And there's a couple of examples that align with the lesson Bridget did in the chat. So when selecting informational texts for our libraries, it makes sense then to prioritize those that have to do with our content standards. For example, the lesson that Bridget did with the third graders aligns with their third grade science content to help them use text features such as the tables and graphical displays in the tornado book that she chose. So the more we can connect everything, the deeper the learning is going to be.
And lastly, we really want to connect our students to quality whole text. So we don't want to just always an article or a short passage, but we want to get text in the hands of students. And so these are some great resources that Laura's going to pop in the chat. So it's one that we keep referring to because it's free and teachers love free. And I can hear that my family is home. But Newsela is a great resource. Readworks.org, Mel, which has Go Pebble, which is a really nice resource that not only gives a text, but it also has the feature where you can, the students can actually hear the text being read to them. So if you have struggling students, struggling learners, struggling readers, or students acquiring a second language, that's a great resource. And then the last one is Learning A to Z. So that's kind of the umbrella or the parent company where we have RazKids, A to Z, all of those other companies that are underneath that can be found under Learning A to Z. There are some free pieces to Learning A to Z, but not all pieces are free.
Okay, and if everybody could just hang with us for just a couple minutes, we're going to be done in about 2 minutes. We wanted to also remind you of the great resources that are available at literacyessentials.org. Of course, the online modules are there to help you learn about all of the literacy essentials. It's a great resource. You can go through the modules and earn sketchies for them as well. And they've also added a new section called Remote Learning Resources up in the corner. And one of the resources that's at that site is from Dr. Nell Duke. She is the researcher from the University of Michigan that has done quite a bit of this work with the essentials. And she's got some more tools for you to think about small group instruction virtually. In particular, that might be primary K1 teachers. There's quite a bit of a section and some work with some of the phonics and some of those things and what that might look like in a virtual setting. We just couldn't fit all of that in an hour. And then lastly, we'd like to point out our summer learning blitz that's been happening all month. All of these sessions that you can see on the calendar. Today we're here, the 25th. This is the session you're enrolled in. We still have room in our sessions coming up the next 3 days if you're interested in those to learn about MTSS. Or Heather and I are doing the observational assessment piece on Friday. Those are all there for you. And also, I'm going to just take a moment and click on this so you can see when you go to the LLN site. I'm going to ask Laura if she could put that in the chat, lln.risa.net. And if you go to professional learning, you'll see that calendar. But then if you scroll down, and this is where the gold is, everybody. So this is where you want to tune in. This is where all of the previous sessions that we've done this whole month are here. and ready for you to access. So for example, if you wanted to learn about using Google to enhance writing, there it is. So all of those webinars are there for you to use. Give me just a moment here. We really want to thank you for your time. Laura, for some reason, I'm not able to get back to my screen to share, so I'm hoping that you can put in the chat for everybody the tiny URL for the feedback. We're hoping that folks can do the feedback for us. That would be great. We invite you to do that. And then also for those of you that might be literacy coaches or in a role, in a leadership role, we invite you to stay on the call with us, and we're going to be a bit more informal, and we can help you if you're thinking about needing to facilitate this session. But we want to thank you for being with us today, and we really wish you the best of luck on your journey as you get ready to start school, whether it's virtual, hybrid, combination. We're excited for you, and just remember that quote from the beginning, right? You didn't forget how to teach. We can do this, everybody. We got this. So have a great afternoon, and you're invited to stay on with us if you'd like to learn more about facilitation. Have a great day, everyone.